Okay. Hi, everybody. So I told you earlier today I was going to come outside and read our story today because we talked a little bit about Earth Day being earlier this week. And I wasn't able to do this on Earth Day, so we're going to do it today. And the story I chose is called Miss Rumphius. It's about a woman who finds a way to make the world a more beautiful, pleasant place for people. And that's what I want you to think about when I read this. I want you to think about ways that you can do things to make the world a better place to live in for yourself and for the people that are around you. And that's what this woman, Miss Rumphius, did. And that's the name of the story. The story and the pictures are by Barbara Cooney. And one of the big differences about this story and about where like the scenery that you might see right now is that this takes place right next to the ocean. But there's something super similar in the story too, so that would be something that's different. It takes place near the ocean, which is not where we are. But there's a really key part of the story that that we do see where we live, so I'll tell you about that when we get to it. Miss Rumphius by Barbara Cooney. The Lupin lady lives in a small house overlooking the sea. In between the rocks around her house grow blue and purple and rose-colored flowers. The Lupin lady is little and old, but she's not always been that way. I know. She's my great aunt, and she told me so. Once upon a time, she was a little girl named Alice who lived in a city by the sea. From the front stoop, she could see the wharves and the bristling masts of tall ships. So the wharf is where all of the ships are parked. And the masts are the tall parts of the ships that hold the sails. Many years ago, her grandfather had come to America on a large sailing ship. So you can look at that picture. Now he worked in the shop at the bottom of the house, making figureheads for the prows of ships. So have you ever seen a picture of a ship that has a sculpture on the front of it? Like, it's kind of hard to see in this picture, but he's carving a decoration that will be on the front of the ship. So that's what a figurehead would be. And every ship would have a slightly different one. He painted pictures too of sailing ships and places across the sea. When he was very busy, Alice helped him put in the skies. So you can see Alice right here putting the skies on one of his paintings. Oh, and now that I look more closely, actually everything in that picture is a figurehead that he has first carved and then painted to put on the fronts of ships. So all of those things are big wooden figureheads that would have gone on the fronts of ships that were special just to the ship that was being decorated with it. In the evening, Alice sat on her grandfather's knee and listened to his stories of faraway places. When he had finished, Alice would say, "When I grow up, I too will go to a faraway place, and when I grow old, I too will live beside the sea." "That is all very well, little Alice," said her grandfather, "but there is a third thing that you must do." "What is that?" asked Alice. "You must do something to make the world more beautiful," said her grandfather. "All right," said Alice, but she didn't know what that could be. In the meantime, Alice got up and washed her face and ate porridge for breakfast. She went to school and came home and did her homework, and pretty soon she was grown up. So there's a word in there that we've talked about when we read about the three bears that you might not have heard before that, and that's porridge. Remember, porridge is something that lots of times people eat for breakfast, and it might be similar to oatmeal or cream of wheat or something like that. Then my great aunt Alice set out to do the three things she had told her grandfather she was going to do. She left home and went to live in another city far away from the sea and the salt air. There she worked in a library, dusting books and keeping them from getting mixed up and helping people find the ones they wanted. Some of the books told her about faraway places. People called her Miss Rumphius now. Sometimes she went to the conservatory in the middle of the park. When she stepped inside on a wintry day, the warm, moist air wrapped itself around her, and the sweet smell of jasmine filled her nose. "This is almost like a tropical isle," said Miss Rumphius, "but not quite." So in that sentence, she calls something a tropical isle. An isle is the same thing as an island. It's a different word, but it means the same thing. So inside where these all of these super beautiful plants are growing, it makes her feel like she's on an island in the ocean, but she's not. She's inside, and the plants are just growing there as if they would on a tropical isle. So Miss Rumphius went to a real tropical island where people kept cockatoos, which are those super colorful birds. Actually, here's a picture of a cockatoo. It has a bright yellow thing on its head, a big feather that sticks up, and then the rest of it is white. And lots of times cockatoos learn how to talk if they're pets. And in this case, it's hard to tell because the cockatoo might live wild on the island, but land on the people who live there. Who knows? And here's a little monkey. And she walked on the beaches. She picked up beautiful shells. One day she met Bapa Raja, king of a fishing village. "You must be tired," he said. "Come into my house and rest." So Miss Rumphius went in and met Bapa Raja's wife. The Bapa Raja himself fetched a green coconut and cut a slice of it off the top so Miss Rumphius could drink the coconut water inside. Before she left, the Bapa Raja gave her a beautiful mother of pearl shell on which he had painted a bird of paradise and the words, "You will always remain in my heart." "You will always remain in mine too," said Miss Rumphius. My great aunt, Miss Rumphius, climbed tall mountains where the snow never melted. She went through jungles and across deserts. She saw lions playing and kangaroos jumping, and everywhere she made friends she would never forget. Finally, she came to the land of the lotus eaters, and there, getting off a camel, she hurt her back. "What a foolish thing to do," said Miss Rumphius. "Well, I certainly have seen faraway places. Maybe it is time to find my place by the sea." And it was. So she did. From the porch of her new house, Miss Rumphius watched the sun come up. She watched it cross the heavens and sparkle on the water, and she saw it set in the glory in the evening. She started a little garden among the rocks that surrounded her house. She planted a few flower seeds in the stony ground. Miss Rumphius was almost perfectly happy. "But there's still one more thing I have to do," she said. "I have to do something to make the world more beautiful." "But what?" "The world already is pretty nice," she thought, looking out over the ocean. The next spring, Miss Rumphius was not very well. Her back was bothering her again, and she had to stay in bed most of the time. The flowers she had planted that summer before had come up and bloomed in spite of the stony ground. She could see them from her bedroom window, blue and purple and rose-colored. "Lupins," said Miss Rumphius with satisfaction. "I have always loved lupins the best. I wish I could plant more seeds this summer so that I could have still more flowers next year." But she was not able to. After a hard winter, spring came. Miss Rumphius was feeling much better. Now she could take walks again. One afternoon, she started to go up and over the hill, where she had not been in a very long time. "I don't believe my eyes," she cried when she got to the top. For there, on the other side of the hill, was a large patch of blue and purple and rose-colored lupins. "It was the wind," she said as she knelt in delight. "It was the wind that brought the seeds from my garden here, and the birds must have helped." And then Miss Rumphius had a wonderful idea. She hurried home and got out her seed catalogs. She sent off to the very best seed house for 5 bushels, which are big containers, of lupin seed. All that summer, Miss Rumphius, her pockets full of seeds, wandered over the fields and headlands, sowing lupins. Now, sowing is a word that farmers use to explain what you do when you're planting seeds. So lots of times in the springtime, which is right now, people plant seeds everywhere. And when you're talking about planting seeds, you sow them. And then when they're ready to be picked, if they're crops that turn into food for people, then that process is called reaping. So right now she's sowing the seeds, which is not the same kind of sowing as sewing something with a needle and thread or with a sewing machine. It's different, it's spelled differently. And what she's doing with her hand, tossing the seeds out into the grass and onto the hills, is sowing the seeds in that way. She flung handfuls of them around the schoolhouse and the back of the church. She tossed them into hollows and along stone walls. Her back didn't hurt at all anymore. And now some people called her that crazy old lady. The next spring, there were lupins everywhere. Fields and hillsides were covered with blue and purple and rose-colored flowers. They bloomed along the highways and down the lanes. Bright patches lay around the schoolhouse and back of the church. Down in the hollows and along the stone walls grew the beautiful flowers. Miss Rumphius had done the third, the most difficult thing of all. So if you look, you can see they're everywhere from all of the places where she had sown the seeds earlier in the year. My great aunt Alice, Miss Rumphius, is very old now. Her hair is very white. Every year there are more and more lupins. Now they call her the Lupin Lady. Sometimes my friends stand with me outside her gate, curious to see the old lady who planted the fields of lupins. When she invites us in, they come slowly. They think she is the oldest woman in the world. Often she tells us stories of faraway places. When I grow up, I tell her, I too will go to faraway places and come home to live by the sea. That's all very well, little Alice, says my aunt, but there is a third thing that you must do. What is that? I ask. You must do something to make the world more beautiful. All right, I say. And that's the end, but sorry, not the end. But I do not know yet what that can be. And if you look at that last picture, you can just see all of the lupin that are left over. And sometimes when someone leaves something like that goes on and on, it's called a legacy, and that's something that just lasts over time. And that's exactly what's happening with what Miss Rumphius has done. She's leaving a legacy of super beautiful flowers to make the world more beautiful. So, like I was saying, I want you to think about ways that you can make the world more beautiful. And one of the things that you can think about is it doesn't have to be hard or complicated. Lots of times, one of the things that you can do to make where you live more beautiful is just by treating the people around you in a really kind way. And when I thought about that as one of the most important ways to make the world a more beautiful place, I thought about a poem that Shel Silverstein wrote that's super short and super simple, actually. It's called Hug-a-War. Do you know that game Tug-a-War, where some people hold one end of a rope and some people hold another end, and they pull and try to pull the other people into one place and away from another place? And this is based on that, but it's kind of the opposite. It's called Hug-a-War. And if you look, there's just one little picture that goes with it. Super short poem. And it goes like this. I will not play at tug-a-war. I'd rather play at hug-a-war, where everyone hugs instead of tugs, where everyone giggles and rolls on the rug, where everyone kisses and everyone grins and everyone cuddles and everyone wins. So that's one of my favorite little poems. So go out, make the world more beautiful, take care of it, and I'll see you tomorrow.